So welcome. I'll try to run through the process to give an overview for you. We appreciate you being here early this morning. To give you a brief overview, we'll interview you here and the board will vote on their recommendations. At the forum on September 19th, the board will announce their recommendation and it will show up with an asterisk on the voting ballot. This does not mean that the candidate has the entire club endorsement, but just the board recommendation. The entire membership will still vote after the forum. We will keep voting open through Sunday evening after the meeting, and members of the club will receive an emailed ballot. The forum and this interview will be recorded for those who are unable to attend. Today we'll be asking questions. Most will be about 2 minutes unless otherwise noted. And so do you have any questions before we begin?
I don't. Thank you very much.
Great. So Nancy Yep will start us off.
I can't hear you, Nancy.
Sorry, I was on mute. That probably wasted a minute. Anyway, you have 1 minute to give us your reasons for running for mayor and just a little introduction of yourself.
Okay, great. I am running to mayor to work with you to create a livable, climate-forward city with urban amenities. I stand for safe streets for kids and us, providing cost-effective mental health, and homeless services, and public health services, excuse me, enshrining economic and racial equity, and creating an accountable and open city government. I have proven leadership and management skills gained during my work on the council and my years of experience in government. Cities change all the time. Berkeley needs a mayor who looks forward to change and is prepared to lead us through it while preserving what makes us special as one of the country's healthiest and most lively small cities. As a longtime resident of the diverse Shattuck corridor and the former District 4 council member, I have a unique vantage point on how to create a livable modern city. I brought people together in coalitions to pass legislation. I do not shy away from issues and do not abstain to avoid the hard votes. I cast, for example, the tie-breaking vote on allowing ADUs in the hills without parking and refusing to pave Hopkins Street without safety and environmental improvements. I listen and work with our business community and residents, for example, to create our Hope Center. I look forward to working with you. Without this type of leadership, we will be in an endless cycle of competing ballot measures as we see this year.
Thank you. I'm not sure we mentioned that I would be a timekeeper. So one thing you'll see is every once in a while, I'll do this if we're sort of toward the end of the
time. I didn't know that, Heidi. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Wrap up.
Thanks,
That's
Heidi.
okay.
That's
no
my
worries.
fault. I apologize. We were late.
Yeah, I've run these, I know.
The second question actually gives you an opportunity to expand further on what your top issues and priorities would be as mayor, and 2-minute response, please.
Okay. I have a lot of priorities, but the top 3 for me are building an accessible, affordable, and transit-rich city. Number 2, public safety for all. And number 3, climate equity. In terms of an accessible city, we need to invest resources if we want to have affordable housing and we want to have a city that everyone wants to be in. However, we cannot rely entirely on the residents of Berkeley. I'm looking forward to working with regional partners and insisting that we get our fair share. The way that funds are allocated to Berkeley is unfair. We're not receiving what we are due, and we are also not adequately evaluating our services for their cost effectiveness. So as we work towards this accessible city that's transit rich and has affordable housing, we have to really be tough on understanding what is happening with the numbers, and that's something that I excel at. Number 2 is a climate equity approach. It's great that I can afford solar panels, but we have many residents in Berkeley that do not have these resources. I established the Climate Equity Fund, which allows low-income homeowners and tenants to, using union labor, to get improvements made to their environment. And also, I'd like to expand that to include fire safety improvements. We've done a lot of work on earthquake safety, but we have not attacked the twin crises of climate and fire safety. And finally, real public safety for all. That includes making sure we have an adequate police force, but also that we're not wasting resources on things that they are not best placed to do. We want them to fight crime, essentially. And we are slow in adopting the unit that's supposed to deal with mental health crises. We have not expanded our work in BurkDOT. We've really not moved forward on the promise of trying to see who the best people are to do the job cost effectively while leaving our police intact to deal with crime. I worked with our department to create a program to etch catalytic converters. So with VIN numbers, so when they're stolen, we could know when we found them who was behind that. And we've seen a big decline in those thefts. I work with our Downtown Business Association on making our downtown safer and more livable. And I'll continue that work while insisting that we have people do the job that they are best suited for. Thank you.
I've got the next question. Kate, good to see you this morning.
Mhm.
Following up on what you just said about the downtown, what's your vision of improving and enhancing Berkeley's downtown?
Right. We're in a period right now of growing pains. There's a lot of new building going on. But I just want to say that I don't think the downtown was also fabulous in, say, 2000. I think what we're doing now in creating a more lively downtown is a real plus for the city. However, in the meantime, we're losing a lot of our small businesses. So one of the things I'm very focused on is how do we provide security for those businesses so they don't get forced out. For example, Missing Link was forced out of Shattuck because there's going to be a housing project, all to the good. But in the meantime, there's an empty hole and there's crime on my street and a drug den, frankly. So we have to think about the vitality now as we move towards the future. I worked with the DBA on a lot of beautification efforts for the downtown, trash corrals, making Bart Plaza better, doing seating, creating a business damage fund. So when people are vandalized, we can help them recover from that. But we need to focus both on housing and retail at the same time. They need to be integrated together. I'm also a little concerned we're adding residents without some of the necessities of life, like a good grocery store in the downtown. We don't have that. I live in D4. We have no grocery stores except on the very northern end. We don't have the things that make a city a city. We're not becoming Manhattan. We're kind of becoming a suburb with apartment buildings because we're not building the other things. And I consider that the city's responsibility to set that direction, not the responsibility of an individual building developer. But we need to do the long range planning. We need to step back and say, what do we need to make this a vital city and someplace that people really want to live?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. My question is, currently absent council direction to the contrary, city staff are continuing to follow the Martin versus Boise standard of offering shelter in every instance before closing an encampment. According to city staff, as of yesterday, they do not have the authority to enforce and close dangerous encampments which constitute a public health hazard or even a fire hazard. Do you believe that continuing the approach is the right policy, especially given persistent and dangerous encampments?
I'm not certain that's completely true because we have closed encampments in the last 2 years under the Boise regime. I think, though, what we're finding is we're closing encampments and putting people in living situations where they are not going to stay. So while I like the hotel model, it's cost effective for us because we get money from the state and county. People are not staying there because they have no ability to cook, live their own lives, have visitors, et cetera. So we see on San Pablo this huge problem of people in the hotel there spilling onto the street, creating crime, and going back to living in these encampments. So as quickly as we're cleaning them up, they're being recreated. We need solutions like the Hope Center, which is in downtown, Jordan Court, which is in my district, and things that have real permanency to them with services. At the same time, I'm completely in favor of closing encampments that are dangerous. We had this on Milvia Street where we closed that encampment under the Boise regime. So I'm not sure why it's being said that they don't have the authority. I think clarifying that authority would be really helpful. I think it's not they don't have it. It's just there's been so many statements of what we're doing that it can be confusing for staff. So it needs to be clarified.
Thank you. For the Harrison corridor in particular, this is a follow-up question, all non-criminal alternatives to enforcement, including motel rooms at the Super 8, now the Campus Hotel, have been offered. For this particular encampment, do you believe the city of Berkeley should continue to acquire motels and add shelter beds before closing it? Or should the encampment, only if it is deemed dangerous with very specific definitions, going back to what you said about explicit clarity, should it be closed without any additional shelter offers?
These encampments are destroying West Berkeley, frankly. I mean, I used to see that in the downtown, and now the problem's just moved to West Berkeley. It's impossible to go to these businesses. It's dangerous for residents, and I don't think it's good for the people that were formerly homeless or are currently homeless either. We need safe RV parking, and we need more shelter beds. If there is a dangerous situation, I would close it immediately. If there's not, we have housing we could be offering. I don't think we've reoccupied our shelters to the full level they were at before COVID. We had to decommission some of the beds to keep people separated. I don't think that's been fixed. I've been asking for that number for quite a few years now. What are we doing about these shelters? We do need to get people to move. I don't care if there's one person living on my block in a tent. I have that guy, Kevin, who's kind of a good neighbor, but he's one and he's not creating a problem. So the good neighbor policy that Peter Redu put forward, which says this is what we expect of you, I think we have to insist on that. So it's on a case-by-case basis, I think, realistically, but the way it is right now on Harrison in front of the businesses is just not tenable.
Thank you. Going now to, is it Eric?
Eric, hi, Eric.
Good morning.
Hi.
So my question is going to be about housing and will again be a 2-minute response. So in this and past campaigns, you have spoken of yourself as a pro-housing candidate and even said at past public hearings and meetings that you like and support tall buildings. However, at a 2017 candidates forum, you said you did not support tall building at BART stations, and at a Livable California meeting, boasted about having been the only council member to not support increasing the city's housing capacity and proudly noted it had made you a local pariah. How do you reconcile these opposing positions, as well as your absence during the city's council's vote to end exclusionary zoning?
First of all, people evolve. And I think you've seen that with Mayor Argy. This is in 2017, right? I had barely gotten into office at that point. We've had more building happening downtown. I haven't objected to any of these tall buildings. Height is not the issue that I concern myself with. I'm totally fine with the BART project, except I would have liked to see more building separation on the buildings on Sacramento, to be frank. I think it's kind of a wall of building, and I don't love that. So we've seen a change in people's attitudes towards housing. And I don't think referring to a 2017 comment is very helpful. What we need to do is look at the record. I voted for the ADUs in the hills when there was a massive objection by the 2 council members that live in the hills. And they were using parking as an excuse not to do it. I'm in favor of the multifamily housing everywhere in the city. I have that in my block. Look where I live. Next door to me is an apartment building. Next to that is a house with 2 cottages. Then there's another house. Then there's an apartment building. That's the kind of city I like living in. That density is really attractive to me. So the sort of gentle densification is great. The tall buildings downtown are not a problem. The only problem is, as we were waiting for them to be built, as I said, we are ending up with a sort of shell in some parts of the downtown that's creating crime and other problems, which we need to rectify. So I think that would be my response. People do change. I'm a good listener. I learn things. I changed my position on surveillance cameras as well towards supporting them when my opponent did not. So I think, you find out things when you get into office.
So just to follow up, so given that the exclusionary housing vote was in 2021, as was the Livable California meeting, since you say you have evolved, will you commit to opposing Livable California's future anti-housing stances and to affirmatively support as mayor the efforts to end exclusionary zoning across the city?
Yes. And in fact, I've never been a member of Livable California because I think that they have serious problems in terms of their proposed ballot measure they were trying to do, et cetera. I don't like that approach at all. I think every city needs to figure this out while building the needed housing.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think I'm next.
Yes.
Good morning, Kate. Good to see you. This is Remy.
Hi.
The question you've already spoken about numbers without being asked, but so this question is specific to the budget, this year's budget. Which aspects were you most proud of, and which ones are you most disappointed by?
Thank you for that question, Remy. I'm disappointed that the city is yet to settle its contract negotiations with our largest public employee union, and yet the claim is that the budget is balanced. I don't think it is balanced. And I think we should have held more aside. I'm also concerned about the ongoing expenditure for some of our homeless programs, which I don't think, like pathways, which I don't think have been shown to be cost effective. I'm disappointed we're not doing more analysis of our programs. For example, we got a request to spend, I think it's $9 million on a large fire truck for the hills. And there was no analysis of whether we should be doing smaller vehicles because of the small windy streets up there. So I feel sometimes there's a lack of analysis of what we need. I'm very happy with the work that's gone into youth safety now in the ceasefire, not Middle East ceasefire, Berkeley ceasefire program, that finally that got launched. That was sitting in abeyance for about 4 years. And we had children, like Latinx kids were murdered at a party 2 years ago, et cetera. So every day we waited on that was a day that another kid was going to be injured. So it's good that we're moving ahead on that. So I'm extremely excited about that. I'd like to see us move ahead on the minimum income that Councilmember Taplin has put forward. Some of the other parts of reimagining policing that have to not do with crime, but have to do with, again, assigning duties elsewhere, like BurkDOT, should be pushed forward more quickly. And that's not happening fast enough.
Thank you.
Actually, my question was next, but I had to go to the restroom, so Remy gracefully saved me.
Hi, Diego.
Thank you. So my question is, I think you've already alluded to this, so good segue. Automated license plate readers and surveillance cameras have recently helped Berkeley police catch serious criminals, including recently nabbing a driver who did a hit and run and seriously injured a child. Do you support automated license plate readers and hotspot cameras to prevent crime and catch criminals, so long as the city complies with the surveillance ordinance and Public Works retains control over the cameras?
Thank you for those conditions, because those are the conditions I care about. I helped write the surveillance ordinance, and then I helped write the policy that allowed us to buy ALPRs and these cameras, working with the police department and their union. As long as we are protecting data from being sent to places like Texas, which frankly are going to send agents here to crack down on gender assignment surgery, crack down on people seeking choice rights, I don't trust their police. I trust our police. So the data retention policies that I wrote, which keep data for minor traffic things like you're in a 72-hour parking zone for longer for only a limited period, are really important to me. I don't want to build a record of somebody, oh, they're a bad parker. They keep parking illegally. We need to be careful about how we use the data, but I think the data can be really useful. I voted for the pilot of the surveillance cameras. Councilmember Hahn did not. I think we need to see how those are being effectuated and are they working for us? That's kind of where I'm at at this moment, is seeing how we can put them at entrance and exit points. I'm not in favor of putting surveillance cameras just where there are homeless people. And I will say that I think there is sometimes an effort to do that. And I think we should be thinking about serious crime when we're talking about these cameras.
Okay, I had a follow-up, but you answered it. So
okay.
I think next is Chris. Thanks so much.
Hi, thanks. Good morning. Do you support fully implementing the Berkeley bike plan and pedestrian plan to ensure that residents can move around the city without fear of getting hit by a car? If so, how will you see to it that appropriate funding and staffing are available to achieve this goal? And if not, why not?
Hold on a second. Absolutely, I'm in favor of FF. I was the lone vote, as I was going to say in my introduction, but forgot, that said we cannot just pave Hopkins Street without any safety improvements or environmental improvements. That was a hard vote. That was a 5-4 vote in the end. And I had to go against the mayor, Councilmember Bartlett, Councilmember Hahn, Councilmember Wengraf to say, no, we have to implement these plans. This is one of the key things we need to do, not just for the environment, but really for kids. I mean, how sad is it that people feel it's not safe for their kids to bike or walk to school on their own? That's why the Milvia Bikeway was so important to me. We had millions of complaints from residents. People did not like it. I live right near there and they're all like, oh my God, you took my street. We got over it. In a month, we drove somewhere else when we needed to drive. I created the Dwight Triangle, Dwight Way intersection improvements in California when 2 children were hit. I've done a lot of work on making sure that we have quick build projects using the Uber and Lyft tax, which I wrote. last year we had a kid hit at Halloween where they were walking, and I was able to, in the budget committee, quickly take the money and use it for quick build improvements. So yes, we have to build out these plans. There may be a change. Plans change. I don't know exactly every street that's there. And in the middle of the committee hearings we were having, so that our committee facilities could better understand what was in the bike plan, the committee hearings were canceled. And that was a real shame, because I was working with Liam Garland on let's understand the bike plan. Let's understand the pedestrian plan. I think people are exaggerating what it calls for. There's a lot of fear mongering going on that is really super unhelpful. It is one of the things that motivated me to run for mayor, the fact that our public works director was fired and that we have a sort of a take no prisoners thing going on with this. When I think of this safety issue as something that applies to everyone, seniors need to walk, kids need to walk and bike, people need to be able to get to their store without being unsafe.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for being here and answering these questions. And we want to give you, and we were able to fit it in the time period. And I want to give you an opportunity. You can take 2 minutes to add anything that maybe you weren't able to say or offer us a closing.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. I wasn't sure of the format, but I will say that I want to talk a little bit about the viability of my campaign. I'm using public financing, and I have raised the equivalent amount of money as my opponent, my primary opponent. I really think this is an important innovation voted on by the residents of Berkeley. We see that this is really popular with the public as well. I have about 800 donors. We have 400 yard signs out on the street. We're having town halls on subjects and house parties every single week. And people are responding to that. I've gotten the endorsement of many important groups important to me. For example, the National Union of Healthcare Workers endorsed me. 350 Bay Area endorsed me for my climate work. I've been endorsed by the Wellstone Democratic Club and a number of other organizations. I feel that this campaign is really about us all having a chance to say, what does the city we want in the future? What do we want the city of the future to look like? And again, to stop these culture wars, which I think are very damaging and really unnecessary. Just going back to the Millia example, when you talk to people, when you explain how it's going to work, when you take the time to work with the staff to develop a budget and an implementation plan, these things can work. When you rush through and just proffer ideas without any of that material, you end up with something that isn't going to work, that lands on the city manager's desk without enough backup for them to actually do their job. So I'm committed to making sure that we develop ideas and plans together as a city, with the other city council members, with the community, so that everyone understands what's going on and it makes sense when it gets to the city manager and isn't sort of half-baked, which we have seen some of. Also, I just want to tell you one more time about my budget experience, which is extensive throughout the state of California. I ran the $1 billion court budget for the state, which involved all 58 counties, and also looked a lot at equity issues. How do we allocate the money to make sure everyone's getting their fair share? We don't want a system that's really good in Alameda County and terrible in Amador, for example, for families. That's something similar to what I did with the paving money here, where I made sure it was allocated evenly between, allocated by need, not evenly between districts, as I didn't think that was the right method to use. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
Yeah, you too, Lori, and everyone else. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.